but I feel like his mobility and more importantly, what he's able to do kind of in the run game in closed quarters is going to make him a hell of an offensive guard that in a pinch could play tackle, but a really, really fine offensive guard that, again, you see all those wrestling traits come out in the trenches.
Hello and welcome to the Verbal Commitment Podcast here on the Kansas City Sports Network. I'm Kevin Flaherty. I'm here as always with my good friend Ryan Wallace, and we're talking about the world of local recruiting, from Kansas and Kansas City prospects to the college classes at Kansas, Kansas State, and Missouri. Kansas high school football teams start up their seasons this week, and if you want to have a look at which teams have the highest expectations, which teams have questions to answer, and more, check out our most recent episode. Missouri high school football actually started last week, and Ryan made his way out to Rockhurst's 49-19 win over St. Pius. We'll have analysis of that game, along with an interview from Rockhurst star and Kansas football commitment Kevin Sullivan coming up. If you like what you're hearing, comment below, tell your friends about us, subscribe, hit that like button, or leave us a review, a 5-star ranking, wherever you get your podcasts like Apple or Spotify. We have our own specific audio channel through KCSN on Apple and Spotify, so you can seek us out there. As always, we appreciate you guys helping us to grow and getting us in front of more people like you. Missouri and Kansas will square off in the first border war installment since 2011, with the Tigers hosting the contest in Columbia for the first time since 2006. Expect this to be a big recruiting weekend for Missouri, and as always, we'll break down any commitments for Kansas, Kansas State, or Missouri as they come. But let's actually get started with a quick piece of local high school news. Jason Rogers resigned as head football coach at Lee's Summit North following some off-season practice violations, with Darren Washington continuing to serve as interim head coach. Ryan, big news at a local powerhouse.
Yeah, big news. It's just crazy because it's, the Broncos got hit initially, like I think it was late July or early August. And then in this piece of resignation that came out publicly, I think A10 Varsity Preps KC were all over it. Come to find out, there were still violations that were occurring. And, not to get too deep into the weeds, but again, I would like to say that this is surprising news. But, I think folks that are plugged into the high school scene, we can just leave it at this was kind of I don't want to say a long time coming, but there has been some murky waters there, at least Summit North for a little bit. And obviously the players don't have everything to do with that. This is an all-encompassing thing. And hopefully that this is kind of the first change in first step in a direction towards change.
Ryan,
is that good?
Yeah.
Was that politically correct enough?
I believe so. We've seen some sort of seismic coaching movement here in the past few years across the city. This would certainly count as that as well. Washington's an easy guy to root for as interim head coach for me. He played at Ray Peck, then at Pitt State, spent some time with the Atlanta Falcons. For any Missouri fans who are watching, he is the younger brother of Derek Washington, who, of course, is a terrific running back for the Tigers in the late 2000s. I'll be interested to see, Ryan, how the Broncos do this year, whether Washington is able to turn that interim tag into a permanent tag, because if not, this is going to be a very highly sought-after job in the Kansas City area.
Oh, no doubt. And, Elijah Lee is another coach that's on the defensive side of this coaching staff. And very quickly, Kevin, you kind of predicted this. You were out in front. Ray Peck pushed Lee Summit North in week 1. So again, they've already kind of been pushed maybe a little bit more than they thought they would, or than the masses thought they would. Now they get to kind of deal with this moving into week 2 and thereafter. So very, very curious to see what impact this has on Lee Summit North, not only in the future, but the rest of this season.
let's go ahead and get into our Tacos for Life Player of the Week. Tacos for Life has a wide variety of options to choose from in their scratch kitchen and locations across 8 states, including right here in the Kansas City metro on both the Kansas side in Overland Park and the Missouri side in Blue Springs. And for every taco, rice bowl, salad, quesadilla, or nachos that you enjoy, a meal is donated to Feed My Starving Children on a meal-for-meal basis. Those meals are then shipped to more than 90 countries, feeding centers, care points, orphanages, schools, and refugee camps. It's a great cause, and you can help just by doing what we all know and love, chowing down on some great tacos. Every week, we'll pick a Tacos for Life Player of the Week, and this week, we picked Rockhurst athlete Cash Lewandowski, who Ryan was in person to see rush for 146 yards and 3 touchdowns, had 33 receiving yards, and, 53 punt return yards to boot. Ryan, what stood out to you about Lewandowski's performance?
Well, I mean, we'll get to the offensive line here in a little bit later in the show, but I mean, 9+ yards, actually. It was over 9 per rush, 16.5 per catch, just 2 catches, but still the 3 touchdowns. The other part about that, Kevin, is Cash played starts on defense as well. He actually amassed 7 tackles in this game. So, I mean, it was when you say complete performance, it really was the definition of a complete performance. I was blown away just by what he was able to do in week 1 against a strong team. Like, this was not just kind of the non-con, right, of a college football schedule. I mean, Rockhurst comes out, you don't really know who you are in week 1, and they come out against a strong Pius team on the road, and Cash Lewandowski just went nuts, Kevin. We talked about it a little bit after the game. You were busy, obviously, KU and Wagner. That kind of takes some precedence there. But I was trying to fill you in and trying to describe Cash Lewandowski. There are elements of him that are very Cal Arndt-like in terms of kind of the private school, undersized running back, that they're both very physical. Cash is not thin. He's not frail by any means. He's a strong kid, wrestler on the side. So he likes to be tenacious. He's got an element of toughness. And while the balance, I think, and the center of gravity and the coordination is all there, similarly to Cal, he's got a little bit more of this breakaway speed. And we've got highlights from his game against St. Pius, and you'll get to see some of that breakaway speed. There's the quickness, the shiftiness in tight areas as you see him kind of weaving his way through the Pius defense on this long touchdown run. But you also just see him separate time and time again on this big return. He doesn't get enough of a window to get all the way to the end zone. But again, the separation, when he wants to take off and get some burst, it's there. It was one of those nights, Kevin, where if you're up against, there's only one grandstand at Pius. So everybody's kind of up against that home sideline. And parents will laugh at this. Players, you, Kevin, we're at games all the time. It was one of those nights where you quite often, again and again, heard from the stands, somebody tackle him. Like as if it's so easy. It's not easy to do against Cash Lewandowski. I think he put on a performance in week 1, Kevin, that is going to get him noticed right away as a 2027 recruit, as a kid that can play both ways, but also in terms of this season, I think he immediately puts himself on the Simone Award watch list because, again, he was a player that we knew about, but probably undersold a little bit on just how good he can be behind the line that Rockhurst can put out there.
And here is our Tacos for Life Metro Player of the Week. Cash, welcome to the show.
It's awesome to be here. Thank you, guys.
Cash, obviously, you guys started off the season with a really big game right off the bat and showed out against St. Pius. How important was that game for you guys, and how important was it for you guys to get off on sort of the right foot this season?
Yeah, it was super important. First game, we just scheduled these guys last year, and after we got bumped down to 5A, we kind of had to come out and make a statement. I feel like that definitely fired some guys up. So yeah, we come out and we did our thing, and that's what we were expecting to do.
Cash, before you jumped on, we mentioned your rushing yards, the receiving yards, the return yards, the tackles on defense. But I'm curious to hear from you. What element of your week 1 performance did you come away most satisfied and proud of yourself for?
Honestly, the win. We came in, you know, first game of the season, a lot of jitters, a lot of confusion. We didn't have a lot of film over these guys, obviously, since we haven't, seen them play at all. So just getting securing that win was definitely the best part.
We like to ask guys who play in multiple phases, what's your favorite part? Is it catching a pass? Is it breaking a long touchdown run, breaking a punt return? Is it lighting somebody up? Like, what's your favorite thing to do on the football field?
Definitely breaking a long run. I mean, there's no other feeling like that. And looking to your left or right to see your student section going crazy. That's a lot of adrenaline that I love.
You brought up the student section, and that's ironically where I was going with my next question, because anytime we're at a Rockhurst game, there's such great interaction between the sidelines and your student section. What's it like being a student at Rockhurst? What's it like putting on that jersey? And again, being able to interact with those students behind you each Friday night.
Yeah, I mean, Rockhurst is a definitely different place in all good ways. Some guys will be like, "Oh, it's weird you go to an all boys school," but I mean, everything about it is awesome. There's not a lot of distractions. I mean, the brotherhood is out of the world, so it's awesome going there.
Cash, you were a guy that we kind of had circled heading into the season, and yet you probably even exceeded, our expectations with your week one performance. And so I wanted to ask you, what kind of goals do you have for yourself this season?
Yeah, I got a lot of goals. Break 1,000 yards for sure. I mean, it's always a state title every year, but now especially that we're 5A, we got something to prove, and going to win that 5A title, that's the goal.
Cash, I would imagine that Coach Donahoe keeps you guys kind of sheltered from a lot of the public noise out there. But to be completely transparent, Kevin and I came on our Missouri preview show, and we thought maybe Rockhurst had some questions to answer going into this season. I was talking to Kevin Sullivan after the game, and I said, it feels like you guys answered some of those questions. Do you feel like, for whatever reason this season, Rockhurst came in kind of lurking under the radar, and this week one showing at Pius kind of alerted people, hey, don't sleep on us?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially, with our record last year, losing 3 straight games, starting out 5-0, definitely, you know, put us under the radar, like you said. But that's good. I mean, that drives us as a team, and especially me. I like to win, so that helped us a lot.
I know Coach Donahoe keeps you guys focused on a week to week basis. The most
Yeah.
important game is always the next one. But is there any game on the schedule that maybe gets you a little bit excited, where you're kind of like, okay, like that's the team that's coming up in the rearview mirror right now?
Yeah, for sure. A couple teams, Aquinas. I'm farther south than Rockhurst. I'm probably 35-minute drive from my house. So a lot of those guys at Aquinas, I kind of grew up with a lot of those guys. Blue Springs as well. Blue Springs I mean, Coach Donahoe came from there. So that's a big game for not only me but for him as well.
Final one from me, Cash. We had a chance to spotlight you here tonight, well deserved. But I also wanted to, give you an opportunity to give a shout out. If there's anybody you feel like on the Rockhurst team right now just isn't getting enough love, isn't getting enough attention for the player that they are and the player that they might be here in a year or two, who kind of comes to mind first for you that you can kind of give some shout out and some love to?
Yeah, definitely not a single player themselves, but the whole line. I mean, the performance they had. I think I had, 150 rushing yards or whatsoever. But I mean, I'm getting to the second level before even getting touched. So that whole line, they played their ass off that game.
We'll be talking about the offensive line here a little bit later in the show, so don't think that they will go without credit here. But I wanted to finish up with an individual question. Obviously, you're junior. It's early on in your quote unquote recruiting journey, but have you started hearing from schools yet? And is there a school out there that maybe you want to hear from?
Yeah, this weekend I'm going to Mizzou KU. I got a game day visit for there. I mean, any D1 school would be awesome to go to. I like Nebraska a lot. Dad went to college there. Didn't play sports, but that'd still be awesome to go there.
Well, Cash, as our Metro Player of the Week, we'll be sending you and all our future Tacos for Life Metro Player of the Week picks a gift card to enjoy the food at Tacos for Life. We'll be right back on the Verbal Commitment Podcast right after this.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
What's up, guys? I'm BJ Kissel, founder and CEO of KC Sports Network, and I'm here to talk to Kansas City businesses. If you rely on technology, you need an IT support team that's not just another vendor, but a true IT partner. That's how I want to introduce you to my friend and neighbor, KJ Miller. He is a VCIO at ThrottleNet, the Midwest's highest rated and most reviewed IT support company. They've been in business for more than 25 years, helping companies stay secure, productive, and ahead of the curve. They aren't just IT support, but they provide data security, IT strategy, and cloud software services. They do it all, and their reviews show they do it better than anyone else. So if you want to hear about how ThrottleNet can help your local business, join the conversation with myself, KJ Miller from ThrottleNet, and our resident genius from KC Sports Network when it comes to IT, at least as he's affectionately known by us, Mr. Craig Stout. Click the link in the description to hear how ThrottleNet can help you.
Welcome back to the Verbal Commitment Podcast. You can follow along with us on Twitter/X at verbalcommit_KC for clips from the show, conversations about local players, and even the odd highlight through this football season. Last week marked the start of the Missouri high school season, and Ryan was at a big one in Rockhurst, St. Pius. I was at the Kansas Wagner game. Rockhurst went on to win 49-19. And let's talk about some of the players who stood out. First, Ryan, I know Rockhurst won this game, but a big part of you choosing this game was to get eyes on Pius offensive lineman Kyler Kuhn, arguably the top player in the Metro for the 2027 class. What did you think of the talented Warriors offensive lineman?
Yeah, I thought that just watching him go through warmups, obviously there's a little bit of a change with his position. I think he's swapping over from the right side to the left side. So, I think there's a little bit of a mental hurdle there that, again, I didn't see a whole lot of, but I'm sure will get completely ironed out. I'm sure if we talked to Kyler, there were things he came away from that game saying, I wasn't comfortable here, or I could have done this better. So I think a lot of that's going to get ironed out, but I thought by and large, he was a player that delivered. I thought that at times the Pius offense got kind of pushed around a little bit at the line of scrimmage, but I would venture to guess that if you go back and you watch the highlights, and even if we had kind of the full game tape, very rarely was it happening at left tackle. I thought, they only list him, Kevin, at 6'3", 285 in the kind of official Friday night game day roster sheet, but he plays so much bigger. I think he's taller than 6'3". I definitely think he plays longer than your average typical 6'3" offensive lineman. Again, the power is there. The mobility is there. I will say, though, I do feel like his highest ceiling, when you start to think about him as a prospect and as a collegiate recruit, is going to be as a mobile guard. I think he's just, Kevin, he's so good in kind of the confined spaces. He's long enough to play tackle, but I feel like his mobility and more importantly, what he's able to do kind of in the run game in closed quarters is going to make him a hell of an offensive guard that in a pinch could play tackle, but a really, really fine offensive guard that, again, you see all those wrestling traits come out in the trenches.
Yeah, I was going to say he's a tremendous leverage player, but also a guy that you put him at guard, that athleticism is going to play way up when you have him pulling and doing different things in space, because he can do all of those. And to your point, I think part of the reason that we like Kyler, despite the fact that he's at a quote-unquote non-premium position, if you project him to guard, is the fact that he is a lot longer than most guards. There is a chance that, hey, he goes and plays at the Power 5 level, and you could still put him out there tackle despite the lack of ideal height because he has the arm length and the wingspan and things like that. But I think every year in the NFL draft, you hear people talk about, well, this guy could play tackle in the NFL, but he could be a 10-year All-Pro at guard. That's kind of the way I see Kyler Kuhn. Like he's a guy that could play tackle, could maybe even start for you at tackle, but I think that he's a guy that could be an all-conference guy, potentially an NFL guy at guard, depending on how he continues to develop.
Well, and again, you talk about the development, like physically, he's a 285 that's a fairly lean 285. I mean, we're going to be looking at a kid here in 3-4 years time that's easily going to be, if he's 6'3", I would give him, I still think he's probably 6'4", realistically, but every bit of 310 pounds and playing like a 285 pounder. He moves really well for his size, Kevin.
We're also big fans of a lot of that young talent on that Pius roster, but let's actually flip over to Rockhurst. I know we talked about Cash Lewandowski's big night earlier, but Ryan, I want to talk to you about the guys he was running behind, because I think those offensive linemen really left an impression with you.
No doubt. I mean, that offensive line has been a group that we have been trying to evaluate during the offseason for quite some time. And they're kind of a tough group to try and find at times. Like they just kind of go about their business within the confines of Rockhurst. And so obviously we've kind of picked the brains of Chris Gomez and other guys that we know have been around them, have trained with them, have seen them. But up until Friday night, we hadn't really seen them kind of up close and personal since last year at the Aquinas game. And so being able to see a James O'Farrell, their left tackle, that's a 2027, being able to see Jack Sprague, another 2027 lineman, and then Reese Fisher, their center, who's a 2028. I just feel like they more than delivered. We heard from Cash earlier about how, as my light goes out here, we heard from Cash earlier talk about that he didn't feel like he was getting touched until the second, third levels. And I would completely agree with that. I feel like they were just destroying the first block, getting where they needed to be in their gaps. I would have to say if there was one player that I came away maybe more impressed with, at least in this game, and somebody maybe as a recruit that I was curious about. I think when you look at Sprague, obviously he's got the name that we're accustomed to. When you look at James O'Farrell, he's got the length that you're kind of looking for. Reese Fisher, though, as a 2028, they only list him at 6'2", but he's 310 pounds, moves like he's 280 pounds. A really, really solid center, a sound guy that was both good in pass protection and a hellacious run blocker. I was really encouraged with what I saw from Reese Fisher.
The scary thing is, as you know, Ryan, offensive lines get better as the season goes on, not worse. This is the time of year where defenses are usually ahead of the offenses, and the offensive lines are a little bit clunky and trying to get the timing down. And so that Rockhurst offensive line could really be something to watch, especially as they head into the playoffs. We've had a chance to see Rockhurst tight end Kevin Sullivan a couple times now. What did you think about Sullivan?
Well, the first thing that I'll say about Kevin is that he has a body that looks Power 4 ready as it is. I think that more often than not, when you start to see these tight ends, most of them do have the body. But I think what I mean by Kevin's frame is that I think it's not only kind of filled out, but I think he's come a long way since last year in terms of what he can do as a blocker. And I think just what he's able to do with his strength and his power and understanding leverage a little bit better. They lined him up in line a little bit more than I thought we were accustomed to seeing last year, which is a good thing when you think about kind of what he needed to improve on to get him ready for Lawrence. And I also got to see him line up a couple times one-on-one against Kyler Kuhn as a defensive end. And he was one of the few guys that I thought could kind of show a little bit of muscle against Kyler. He's definitely more comfortable as a tight end, don't get me wrong, but you got a little bit of a chance at defensive end to see the footwork, the agility, all those kind of basketball traits that we've talked about with Kevin before. And then when they needed to go to him, it wasn't often. In a game like this, when you had the running game going, Kelly Donahoe wasn't going to abandon that, but there were a handful of plays that they did go to Kevin Sullivan to kind of move the chains, and he's got those sure hands. I mean, he's really good contested catch guy, and I think he's continuing to work on kind of the intermediate routes. We know he can extend the play downfield and, again, kind of just chuck it up deep and let him go get it. I thought he was pretty good in the intermediate routes on Friday night against Pius. Again, not the type of game that they needed to use him as much as a pass catcher, but in due time, I think we'll see that element of his game come out as a senior.
Obviously, Rockhurst also had some young talent. You got a chance to see the 2028 quarterback among other guys. Was there anybody else that kind of popped for you for Rockhurst?
Actually, I wanted to go back to Pius if we're talking about a player that maybe I wasn't keened in on until we got to the game, because there were some guys, Jake Nichols starting at quarterback for Pius, Chase Brookings at Pius, but actually another offensive lineman that caught my attention inside of Kyler Kuhn, played some center. I think he probably could play guard if they needed to. Noah Eblin is a 2027 interior lineman out at Pius. So he's a junior this season, same class as Kyler Kuhn, 6'3", only 260 pounds. So there's the body that still needs to develop there. But in terms of fundamentals, in terms of mechanics, he's really crisp, Kevin. I came away very intrigued, knowing that, again, there's still a lot to work with for him physically. I think he's going to continue to come into his own at the varsity level in a stacked district, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. He'll get tested a little bit this year, and that is a player that I will be kind of have circled. Obviously, Kyler Kuhn's going to be the guy that coaches will get out to Pius, and they'll look at him and Jamel Hallman and Carson Barnes and all these guys. I will not be surprised, though, if Noah Eblin starts to kind of catch the intrigue of some offensive line assistants that want to pit stop by Pius here over the next 2 years.
I can promise you this will not be the last time we talk about Rockhurst or Pius over the course of the season. Ryan also had a chance to talk with Kevin Sullivan himself. He's committed to play at Kansas starting next season. Here's what Sullivan had to say.
Here on the field at Pius after a commanding victory from the Rockhurst Hawklets tonight with KU commit Kevin Sullivan. We'll get to KU in a minute, Kevin, but talk about you guys coming out on fire in week one.
Yeah, we just put so much work into this offseason, and we couldn't lose this game because we really have high expectations for this group. We got a good, big line. We got all the pieces that we need, and we're really just looking forward to this season, and losing was not an option tonight.
Sounded like there at the end in postgame there might have been kind of some added motivation for this team as well, maybe from the heart a little bit.
Yes, sir.
Can you explain maybe to the folks that weren't in that huddle maybe who you guys were playing for?
We're playing for Jeremy Wynn. He's on the back of our helmet with the JW, his initials. He passed away, and he's been a part of this program ever since I've been here. So it's a little new for the whole team not to play without him, and we came out here and played for him today.
You obviously did your thing, a couple big catches, but talk about the performance of one of your teammates, Cash Lewandowski, tonight.
Yes, sir. He's a dog. He is a straight dog. I mean, yeah.
You know, on our show, we had mentioned that maybe Rockhurst was a team that maybe had some questions to answer coming into this season. I know it's only week one,
yes,
but do you feel like some folks, maybe like myself and Kevin, have some answers to some of those questions after a game like tonight?
I mean, yes, sir. I mean, take what you want, but we're not stopping. Yeah.
Let's get to KU and your recruitment. What was it about KU that made you feel so comfortable about committing there quickly?
Just the trust with their coaching staff. Like, I felt the honesty, and they were just 100% trustworthy, and it's close, and there's a bunch of other good stuff in there, but I'm happy with it, and I'm excited to get down there.
How excited are you and how close are you with this 2026 class that they put together? How special is it?
Yeah, it's really special because it's good. With the 26 class, we have like a group chat. We're all together. We all went to the first game. We were all pretty close, so it's gonna be fun because we're gonna do big things at KU. So
breakout season for you last year. What's kind of been your emphasis, your focus heading into your senior year that you know, hey, I want to improve for my senior year, but also I want to improve on this, knowing what's to come at KU?
Well, I just want to improve my game all around, focusing on route running, technique, just keep going at it in the run game, and just becoming a better player.
Did you get a chance to get out to the booth for the first game?
Yes, sir. It was magical.
I was going to say, what was your impression from being able to see some things behind the scenes that the average fan doesn't get to see?
It was great. I mean, I'm pretty pumped up now because they did their thing, and it was just like the stadium's just incredible. So I'm also so excited to see it finish because it's amazing right now. It's going to be just way better when it's finished. But
now you're a KU commit playing on the Missouri State side of the line. This next week, will there be some chatter in the hallways at Rockhurst, maybe? Some friendly rivalries exchanged?
I mean, people can say what they want, but I don't listen to the noise. Rock chalk.
That was Rockhurst tight end and Kansas commitment Kevin Sullivan. We'll talk about some Missouri districting changes, including one involving Rockhurst, and about which game we're headed to this week when we come back.
Success in real estate takes more than vision. It takes the right financial partner. When someone takes something rundown and turns it into something great, that's called a comeback story, like Brain Group. They take distressed properties here in KC, completely rework them, and then turn them into valuable real estate. But that kind of work needs the right bank behind it. Enter Emprise Bank. They're not about cookie-cutter loans. They saw Brain Group's vision, backed them, and now they're making big moves in Kansas City real estate. Talk about your partner in possible. Emprise doesn't do one-size-fits-all financing. They invest in potential and back growth. Visit emprisebank.com/KC to learn more. Emprise Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Calling all Chiefs fans, you could be on the field at the 50 inside GEHA Field for the official coin toss at a Chiefs home game this season. Visit Chiefs.com/GEHA now. Enter to win a chance to be on the field for a once-in-a-lifetime view of the pre-game coin toss. Plus, you can score other exclusive prizes. Enter for a chance to win at Chiefs.com/GEHA. GEHA is the proud partner of the Kansas City Chiefs.
This is the Verbal Commitment Podcast on KCSN. Ryan, some big changes are here on the Missouri side from a district and classification standpoint, including Rockhurst and a team that you talked about wanting to watch as a squad this upcoming season. So what are some of these districting changes? Because I think some of this flew under the radar a little bit.
Oh, well, I mean, this was like show up to Pius and Rockhurst last Friday night, standing there on the game turf going, hey, did you hear about the districts that got announced this morning? So I'm sure coaches knew about it like Wednesday or Thursday maybe, but we come to find out Friday night's matchup, Pius and Rockhurst, is now a new Class 5 district game. So as you see in the graphic, District 8 at the Class 5 level, they have replaced St. Joe Central and Lincoln Prep, and they get Rockhurst and Truman. So Fordo, Platte County, Rockhurst, Pius, Truman, William Chrisman, and Winnetonka. You talk about just a whale of a district. Having Platte County against Rockhurst, against Pius, and again, with Missouri, we're talking about kind of some seeding that could be, in effect now for those three schools going into the state bracket at Class 5. So enormous competition now for Platte County just to kind of get out of the west side of the Missouri bracket. They'll have to go through Rockhurst, not only in district play, but again, to get to the state title game. This is, massive implications there. And then over in District 7 in Class 5 as well, they replaced Webb City, Carthage, and Neosho with Battle, Grandview, and Sedalia Smith's Cotton. So some shakeups there in Class 5. But yeah, Kevin, what are your initial thoughts, though, just sticking with Class 5 for that District 8 with Platte, Rock, and Pius?
That's a murderer's row. And it's funny because I feel like we're already, I don't want to say discounting Pius, but because of Rockhurst's result, you say, okay, Rockhurst was a lot better than Pius. But Ryan, we've always felt like this was a Pius program that was going to be so much better at the end of the season than it is right now because of all the young talent on that roster, the way that team is going to continue to grow. And so Platte County is a team we kind of joked around about when we did the episode talking about Missouri expectations. We said non-Platte County division, and in part was because Platte County was so freaking dominant a year ago, and now all of a sudden you look up and it's, man, Platte County could have some challengers this year, and not just challengers, but challengers just to get to state.
Well, and you also wonder too, we previewed in our Missouri preview show about, Platte is kind of the team of this year. Pius might be the team of future years. And I feel like we nailed it watching some of those underclassmen perform last week. But now knowing that, the reloaded Platte County team isn't the only team that they're going to have to go through next year and the year after, now you've got Rockhurst to deal with. So it'll be very interesting. A kind of a stunner to see that Rockhurst numbers are down to the level that they would have to drop down a class. But here we are, Rockhurst bringing some power to Class 5. The only thing that I'll note that you don't see on the screen there, and again, the teams that are kind of highlighted more bolder in white are obviously teams in our area, Kevin. If you see kind of the grayed out schools and people are wondering why are Nevada and Harrisonville not more bold.
It's just hating on Harrisonville right now.
But I think the big note from Class 4 that you actually won't see in this graphic, the one school from our area that ended up kind of in a lone district by themselves is over in District 5, Odessa, another school we had previewed as kind of like this is their shot in Class 3. They now move up to Class 4. And so now Odessa on District 5 has to deal with the likes of Hannibal and Kirksville and Warrenton. Going back, if you look at what those schools have done just in the last year or two, that is another murder's row of a district. So here's Odessa. We're saying, man, this is the year, and it still might be their year. But moving up from Class 3 to Class 4 will challenge them immensely. And they also might have to face a Pleasant Hill and a Kearney. So it makes Class 4 a lot more intriguing as well. One other note, Kevin, before we get to Class 6, the only other kind of interest that happened below Class 4, 5, and 6, for me anyway, came in Class 3. Pembroke Hill is moving up to Class 3. And so you lose an Odessa, but maybe Pembroke Hill becomes kind of one of the local schools that can really challenge in Class 3 alongside Marysville in competitive District 8. So I wanted to throw that out there for Pembroke Hill in Class 3.
Absolutely. And with Rockhurst moving down, Ryan, what does Class 6 look like?
Well, let's look at Class 6. We'll start from left to right. Ray-Pec is kind of like Odessa. They're that lone school that isn't kind of mixed in with a contingent of Kansas City schools. They find themselves now in District 5, and that's going to be a tough one. That's that Southwest Missouri kind of flavor. Just a tough one for Ray-Pec. I will say, though, Kevin, historically within their DNA, Ray-Pec is built to kind of be the physical, tough, rough and tumble kind of rural school that can go down there and maybe hang with Joplin and Nixa, Ozark, Kickapoo. But a tough one for Ray-Pec moving forward. District 6 in Class 6, you get Blue Springs South and Blue Springs. They stay together in a district. Helias Catholic moves up to Class 6, and they're joined by Hickman and Rockbridge. So that is a very interesting district for me, Kevin, because remember, Helias Catholic was who Platte County beat, thumped in Class 5 state championship last year. They now find themselves in a district with two of our favorites in Class 6 for this season, Blue Springs and Blue Springs South. You see District 7 there is that kind of Lee Summit contingent with North Kansas City and then Park Hill South. And District 8, both the Liberty schools, Oak Park, Park Hill, Staley, and St. Joe Central that I mentioned is moving up from Class 5. Interesting that the two Park Hill schools will not be a district game anymore when they meet. So kind of unfortunate for them there. But what are your thoughts now having seen Class 6, particularly what we see kind of District 6, but especially District 7 and 8 that has that stronger contingency of Kansas City schools?
Yeah, I'm interested to see St. Joe Central in that District 8, just because, man, you've got a murderer's row there, right? Right, Ryan, with the Liberty schools. Park Hill is a school that we'll get to here in a minute. I hope I'm not spoiling anything by saying that, but that's going to be a really tough district. I think I'm not a big fan of separating out Park Hill and Park Hill South. I know sometimes that's just sort of the way it works. But how about Ray-Pec, like you said, in that District 5? And is this the sort of situation where maybe Ray-Pec could build a little momentum there by surprising somebody? I think that Class 6 has a lot of fascinating sort of storylines in that districting.
I'm glad you brought up Ray-Pec too, Kevin, because it feels like when you look at that district on paper, you go, man, that's bad news for Ray-Pec. Like they got the short end of the stick there, but who knows if they go down there and play the spoiler, what momentum like that could do, not only for this season, but kind of moving into the off season and into next season. That might be a blessing in disguise for them. I also would say when I'm looking at these districts, I mentioned Blue Springs South, Helias is a tough district, but in terms of when you talk about the most competitive, like when I'm looking at it on paper, thinking like which one could really go any direction, I think in the immediate, when you think about 2025, it's District 7. Yeah. Lee Summit. What is Lee Summit North moving forward? Lee Summit West feels like I think they're going to be a little bit more competitive this year. We'll see. North Kansas City is always a tough out. And then Park Hill South, like that one for me feels like it could go any direction. I think with District 8, obviously the Liberty schools are going to be a tough out. Park Hill is going to be a tough out. And then in District 6, you've got both the Blue Springs schools. But District 7 would be the one, I think, in the immediate for this season that I would have my attention on moving towards kind of the latter stages, of the season, and kind of see what repercussions that district has in terms of seeding.
Could certainly lead to some playoff shakeups as well, depending on how that seeding shakes out. Last week, I was at Kansas Wagner. This is only the 5th time that we've reminded you of that. Well, Ryan took in Rockhurst St. Pius. This week, we'll be on the road together, and we'll be headed to Park Hill as the Trojans host the North Kansas City Hornets. Both teams are 1-0. North Kansas City started the year with a 56-22 win over Columbia Battle, while the Trojans spent their own time in Columbia, taking out Rockbridge 33-13. Ryan, these are two teams that we're already really familiar with. I went out to the Hornets practice earlier this summer and picked them as a team that I'm investing stock in. And you singled out Park Hill as a team that you didn't think was getting enough preseason buzz.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up what they did in week 1, because I thought that just amped me even more for this week 2 matchup. Because look, you and I aren't going to pretend to know a whole lot about Rockbridge and Battle. They're a little bit out of our neck of the woods. We don't cover them much, but I mean, historically, Rockbridge is a known kind of power in the center of the state. And I think Battle has had, and when it comes to recruiting, they've had some guys sprinkle in every so many years. So, I mean, I don't think either one of those is a cakewalk. And again, to go on a kind of a deeper road trip like that right out of the gate, you heard Cash Lewandowski talk about, you don't really know what you are in week 1. There's some kinks to kick out, to kind of iron out. And to have Park Hill and North Kansas City go on the road and do that, and then come back, I think we're in for a whale of a game at Park Hill in week 2. And I'm really excited again to see if I had to kind of key in on one matchup. Obviously, we're in it for the recruiting. We want to see Kobe Rhymes. We want to evaluate Kobe Rhymes. But beyond just Kobe, that North Kansas City defense, historically, again, known for being very tough. Just the motor doesn't stop. They get to go against Andy Sims in this Park Hill offense that has so many weapons. I cannot wait to get out there and just kind of see that chess match of the North Kansas City defense against that Park Hill offense.
We'll get to Kobe in just a second, but I know I sent you a clip from the Rockbridge game. Andy Sims, in his bag early this season, lined up Dante Dixon actually to take a snap really quickly, motioned under center, pitched it back to Zane Thomas, the quarterback, who threw a touchdown to Braylon Agee. That's involving your talent in some really creative ways. Dixon had a really good game as well. Jonah Ware is a guy that we've talked about on the show and has done a really nice job. But I want to ask you this before we get to North Kansas City, Ryan. It sounds weird to say because he was first team all district from what I remember and all of those things. But is Zane Thomas somehow underrated when you look at the signal callers around Kansas City and you look at the way that they've got a lot of weapons, but man, he's really good at utilizing those guys?
Very much so. I think it's kind of just become this expectation that, you know, Andy Sims has a quarterback and he's going to go throw for 7,000 yards every year. Like that's just like, and so in some fashions, I think that can hold some guys back. But I think the more that you watch Zane Thomas, I think the more that you talk to college coaches, they are becoming more intrigued by him because it's not just last year, just a product of the scheme, right? I think we're going to find out, and I suspect that we're going to see the maturation and just how he's being able to manage the offense, what he's seeing. I think how he's reading defenses. I expect his game to take that next step this season. And again, that's why it was important for us to get out there and see this Park Hill team early. And potentially, we'll see how, the playoff brackets shake out on both sides of the state line. But maybe it's the type of performance in week 2 that leads you and I to say Zane and the rest of those guys are worth a second look deeper into the season.
For North Kansas City, the obvious player to single out, as you mentioned, is linebacker Kobe Rhymes. We talked earlier in the show about Pius 2027 lineman Kyler Kuhn, and he and Rhymes are kind of battling it out right now for the top 2027 player in the city. We've discussed Kobe quite a bit on the show previously, but Ryan, for those who maybe haven't had the history of watching the show, what is it about Kobe that makes him worthy of that sort of discussion?
Well, stop me if you've heard this before, but kind of an athletic specimen on the North Kansas City defense. He's the next in what's become a long line of really, really talented defensive playmakers for the Hornets. When you think about what he does best, I think just the way that he pursues is so special. The athleticism, again, for those that haven't been tuned into the show, a volleyball player on the side, just tremendous hops, but he can play a little bit of running back. He can play a little bit of linebacker. I think he's very athletic in coverage. He's definitely the type of guy that can cover sideline to sideline with ease. And he's starting to really get more comfortable, as you saw in the interview that you had with him in the offseason, being able to kind of diagnose, play a little bit faster. And so that's what excites me to watch him this season. And again, we were very strategic. You and I are very strategic, and there are a lot of games that we'd like to see, but this made sense because you've got Kyler Kuhn in week 1. We can, fresh on our minds, go straight to Park Hill. Again, he and Kobe play different positions. I would expect Kobe Rhymes is going to pop a little bit more than an offensive lineman. It's just natural. But again, I think being able to scout them back to back is going to help us get a lot better stance, a lot more firm confidence on who is sincerely number 1 in 2027 on the Missouri side and who is number 2, because I think it's going to be one of these two. Maybe there's somebody else that's going to skyrocket up and challenge these two for the top spots, but I really do feel like it comes down to Kobe and Kyler for 1 and 2 in 27.
He's also one part of a really strong junior class for a Northtown team that put up 42 points in the first quarter against Battle. Ryan, I know you're really excited to get a chance to see guys like Samuel Zinna, Jayon Hampton, and Reggie Smith in person as well.
Yeah, I know you came back kind of raving about Reggie Smith, and he was a guy that it feels like North Kansas City wasn't able to really unlock to the level that they wanted to last year. We'll see if that happens this year. It sounds like it happened in week 1. And again, in a game with Park Hill, it might require that North Kansas City offense to maybe get out of the ground game and go to the passing game a little bit in order to either kind of separate themselves or keep up. So hopefully this is a chance for us to see. Obviously, we kind of have seen some things on tape of what they can do in the run. I'm really hopeful that we'll see North Kansas City be able to try and air it out. But, even if they don't have the passing yards, again, for guys like you and I, it's still important for us to be able to scout these guys one-on-one. And so you'll be able to get to see Reggie go against the Dante Dixon one-on-one, against the DJ Bronson one-on-one. So that's going to be very, very beneficial for us as well.
We'll keep an eye out for all of our stuff from that game, and that should do it for this week's episode of the Verbal Commitment Podcast on KCSN. Thanks for following along. If you enjoyed what you saw or heard, leave us a comment or a review, like this video, subscribe here on YouTube, or hit us with a 5-star rating if you're listening on an audio platform. And until next time, we'll see you on the trail, and take care.